good morning. So today I wanted to do another poetry review. I'm not going to apologize for the lighting because what we're talking about is actually kind of a spookier anthology. So I thought that this little half light with the red coming on a little bit from my snake enclosures was a fun way to do this. So sorry if you don't like it, but it's what we're doing. So the poetry that I have today is called Soliloquies From My Mansion on the Moon. This is one that I have to apologize just a little bit for because I got asked to read this ages ago and I meant to read it ages ago and I just kind of slacked and got busy and life was kind of crazy for a bit there. So I did not get to it, but I finally finished it and here's my review of it. So I don't have a physical copy of this. When I got it, it was just on Kindle. It might have its physical copy out now. I didn't think to ask about that before I got started on this, but I just read it on Kindle. So that's how you can find it for sure, and maybe it's got a physical version now too. I don't know. But as I said, this was kind of a horror anthology of poetry, which was definitely unique and interesting. Something I've never really read before, and I really enjoyed those aspects of it. It was divided up into 5 different parts, and they were kind of all themed to go together and tell one story, but at the same time the poems all kind of stand on their own too. I felt like more within the specific sections you could see connected threads than throughout the whole book itself, but maybe that was just me and how I ended up reading it, since it was kind of in some fits and bursts and whatnot. But that's just kind of the general thing on it. Now, as I usually do when I review poetry, I wanted to read some poems. The first one that I've got is an untitled poem. There are a bunch of untitled poems within this anthology, so if you want to know which one it is, you'll have to go find out where it is by actually reading it, and maybe enjoy some of the other untitled ones while you're at it, as well as just the other poetry in general, because I did think it was a fun, unique concept. So, this one goes. Near the pond, a campfire would quiet the rivets that the frogs compose into chilling night, for the yawn of burning wood made me feel knighted with my careless glance diving into fire. Now the rivets are louder, and as midnight nail croaks, with the crickets in summer, as the fire pit stays cold, but the faint smoking sings as my bandages slouch down my old riveting noggin, which was fitted for crowns. It was really good imagery within this one, which is part of why I picked it, but also frogs, and I love frogs, so I couldn't resist picking the one that was about frogs. So there's that. And then I have one more that I want to read, which does have a title, so you can actually know which one this one is, and find it within the anthology if you wanted to read specifically this one again. But this one is called Wedding Cake. The wedding cake's a cloud shade of white, offending daylight proudly beige and white. A foamy frosting drapes the circle sponge as lonely rose stains beneath the white, and spongy yellow tunnels loath their way as Mosey's morrows, full of clouds not white. It's scary knocking that possesses mold, as teary couples blind themselves to white. Why threaten the day, you grumpy storm of black? Why ever stain the hearts who wore the white? So brandish knives to frost again the pie, which banished night to skulk away from white. And that one, I really loved the imagery of it. It was one of the standout ones with some great imagery for me, so that's part of why I wanted to highlight that one specifically. However, since I didn't want the video to be a million years long, there are a few other poetry that I want to name as like honorable mentions that I didn't read aloud, so I won't be reading them aloud, but these were other ones that I really enjoyed. And they were, What Does the Hangman See? That one in particular, I really loved like the feel and the rhythm of it. The flow was really great within that one. I also really liked I the Grey, which again had some great imagery. I really liked Gas Masked Bachelorette, which was just a unique little piece. I really enjoyed that one, and it has some callbacks to some other poems within that section, which I really liked how the connecting through line went through that poem and the poems in that section a lot. And then also I wanted to mention the screaming in the morgue, which, like, what does the hanging man see? Also felt like it had a really fun rhythm, and I liked picturing this image of this morgue with these bodies that are like pounding, trying to get their way out, and it was good. I really enjoyed it. So some other things that I just wanted to touch on for if you happen to want to read this poetry book or are interested based on these things that I've said. There are, again, like repeated themes and images within it because it is sort of trying to tell a single story within these poems, even though they also stand alone. So a few of the things I noticed is there's a girl in yellow, there's the repeated use of a gramophone within it. The way that the word I is used is really interesting because a lot of the time I will be used instead of where you would naturally say me. And I thought that was a really interesting choice and gave a very unique voice to the anthology and kind of the rhythm and the grammar of a lot of the poetry. And related to that as well, there were a lot of words that are not quite actual words. For example, grayestly is used as a word, and woest was used as a word, which I like as like a poetry choice. It's fun when you try to make the rhythm of things fit, even though they're not technically real words. Like at one point, there's a poem too that talks about something glowing, and the previous line ended in the word blue. So instead of saying that the thing glows or glowed or whatever would have fit technically grammatically, it said glue. So it was rhyming blue and glue, and anyways, there were nice little poetic things that way, and I liked it as a decision. So there are things like that. If like weird language like that kind of gets to you, maybe some of these poems won't hit as well for you, but I liked it as a choice. And then one final thing that I wanted to do is I wanted to compliment just some of my favorite lines, not the poems themselves that had them, just the specific lines that were like standout lines amongst everything beyond the poem that they were sitting in. The first one that I wrote down was gloomily groans the growling gramophone, which, what great alliteration. I loved it so much. And then we've also got as sorry slaps of wetly smacks. Again, a lot of good alliteration in it. And then the final one that I made note of was sorry silent sickle scythe my sadness. So I guess I really liked the standout lines, the ones that had like alliteration and stuff. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on this. It was a really interesting anthology. I think if you like kind of horror stuff and poetry, it's a really good fit that way. If you just like poetry and are looking for something a little more unique, I really liked this because a lot of poetry tends to be more like memoirs or like describing a nature scene and things like that. So I liked that this had the horror elements instead of kind of those typical poetry things. But yeah, let me know if you end up reading this and what your thoughts are on it. If you have any other standout poems or if you agree with any of my standout poems, I'd love to chat about this because it was a really fun one and it's probably one that I'd read again. So there's my thoughts on that, and this is the Umlaut Harper signing out.